Hi, my name is David. I'm in Taiwan and this is Taiwan in English. In today's exciting episode, we will be talking about English contests. The second type of contest, and I think the most common, is the individual presentation. These get called all kinds of things, but I think the most common are speech contest and storytelling contest. If you are by yourself and you have a chance to memorize what you're going to say, regardless of what it's being called, this is what I'm talking about. If you don't have a chance to memorize what you're going to say, or just a very short time, that's a different thing. It's some sort of improvisation or improv. These are pretty rare in Taiwan, and they're very difficult. If you have to do an improv contest and you need help, reach out in the comments and we'll see what we can do. Back to the individual presentation. I think that the first and most important thing is to know your audience, the people that will be listening to you. Your audience will determine several things about how you will want to present your presentation. This is not based on the information in your presentation, at least not completely. You can, for example, present a nursery rhyme in a mature or grown-up way, but you can't really present a grown-up idea in a kindergarten or preschool way. And a little bit of bad news, most of you present like you're in kindergarten. It's not your fault, but it is your problem. If you find yourself emphasizing each word with a huge smile on your face, I call this the big dumb smile. You might be kindergarten. If you tend to lean over at the waist while you're talking and moving your head left and right, you might be kindergarten. And if you move your head back when you're taking a breath and move it forward while you're talking, you are a chicken. Please don't be a chicken. Doing any of these is not bad. It's doing them too much. How much is too much? That depends on context. If you are talking to young kids, then you will want to talk like you're a kindergarten teacher or a kindergarten TV show. But if you're talking to high school students, you should at least try to be more mature or adult. This channel is aimed at ESL teens in Taiwan, and I always recommend that they should try to do presentations as the young adults that they are. So, I'm telling you not to emphasize each word. What are you supposed to do? Two things. The first is that you need to go through your script sentence by sentence, line by line, and figure out all of the places that you will need to pause. I'm just going to say script from now on, and in this context, that means that whatever you're going to say on stage. These pauses can be for effect, make a point, or so that you can take a breath. This is something that you need to work on, and your first attempt is not likely to be the final version. I talked a bit about tongue twisters earlier. This is part of one with some added pauses. Peter, Piper, picked, a, peck, of, pickled, peppers. I hope that you understand that there were far too many pauses. Use too many and you sound robotic, boring, and monotonous. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Here, the one pause was used to highlight an important part of the sentence. In this case, the subject. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. It is common to put a pause before prepositions and conjunctions. In my script, I'm using commas to let me know where I want to insert a pause, and I think it's a good way for you. Just remember that the pauses can or might be correct when you're talking. Adding commas like this is incorrect when you're writing. Most of the time when you hear a tongue twister, it's just a blur. But other than to impress, it does not really help your presentation. So please don't do Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Those were all pauses for effect. But what about pauses because something is too long? I did a bit of poking around online and I found some very long sentences. Let me be clear, you should never have a sentence anywhere near as long as the one I'm about to read. There is absolutely no reason that this should exist. But here we go, a 107-word sentence from Stuart Little, written by E.B. White. In the loveliest town of all, where the houses were white and high and the elm trees were green and higher than the houses, where the front yards were wide and pleasant and the backyards were bushy and worth finding out about, where the streets sloped down to the stream and the stream flowed quietly under the bridge, where the lawns ended in orchards and the orchards ended in fields and the fields ended in pastures and the pastures climbed the hill and disappeared over the top toward the wonderful wide sky. In this loveliest of all towns, Stuart stopped to get a drink of sarsaparilla. I did my best to read that as written. I don't think I managed it, but that means that I only paused at commas that White put in. But I don't think that that is really a reasonable way to present this, especially for ESL teens in Taiwan. Let's take a look at about the first quarter of the sentence. In the loveliest town of all, where the houses were white and high and the elm trees were green and higher than the houses. Reading this as written has one pause after all. And in writing, that is fine. But as an oral presentation, it can come across as rushed or leaving you out of breath. Where you put pauses is up to you, and it has to be where you think they should go. This, in the loveliest town of all, where the houses were white and high, and the elm trees were green and higher than the houses, is just as valid as in the loveliest town of all, where the houses were white and high, and the elm trees were green and higher than the houses. Or, in the loveliest town of all, where the houses were white and high, and the elm trees were green and higher than the houses. How you decide to break up a sentence is up to you, and hopefully helps you better express yourself in your presentation. If you look this sentence up online, you might notice that I said elm, but the sentence uses elms. Honestly, I'm not sure why they used elms trees, but it was published in 1945, so maybe something changed in the past 80 years. Now that things have been broken into chunks that you will be saying, you get to the second part, picking what to emphasize. I'm just going to use part of the last example. You need to do this for each sentence and part of sentence in your presentation. But where the houses were white and high. The one that I picked has two pauses, meaning there are three parts, or I like to call them chunks. Each chunk needs to have a focus. Only the focus gets emphasized. There are four basic ways to emphasize: fast, slow, loud, and quiet. There are a lot more, but it can be hard, so let's just stick to some basics. The first chunk is only one word, so it's got to be the focus. Where? 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 Which one to use, like I said before, is up to you. What I use or think is best is only an opinion. It does not make it correct. The second chunk has four words. The houses were white. And you can use any of them to be the focus word. The houses were white. The houses were white. The houses were white. The houses were white. I'm not going to go through all the permutations. I think you understand. You're a smart cookie after all. The last chunk, and high, could have a sense or feeling of rising up. So when you say high, you might want to stand a little straighter and taller, maybe lift your chin a little bit. I will add one more thing to keep in mind. Don't always focus on the last word. Questions always have a focus on the last word and a rising pitch or tone. It's often called uptalk and can be confusing and irritating. So unless you're asking a question, focus on the last word sparingly and really avoid the rising tone unless you mean it. That, along with the advice to add emotion from a reading contest, is a good place to start when preparing for a presentation. I will suggest one more thing. Try not to make your mistakes obvious. Mistakes happen. The more nervous you are, the more they happen. If they happen during the contest, just keep going. The judges will have caught it or not. If you stop or stammer, the chances that they will catch it go up a lot. This is getting a little long, so I'm going to talk about the other types of presentation in a future video. And that's it for today. Before you go, if you liked the video or you learned something, please hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss anything. And as always, if you have any questions or you just want to say hi, leave a comment, or you can find me on social media. There are links in the description. And I'll see you in the next exciting episode of Taiwan in English. Bye.